And we are back for another episode of TPS, the number one podcast on iTunes when it comes to productivity, time management, and efficiency. My name is Tan. I'm the founder and CEO of Asian Efficiency, where we help people become more productive at work and in life. And today with me, I have my co-host, Brooks Duncan. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Occasionally, we do an episode where my main motivation for the episode is to find out what you do. I could always ask you in our internal Slack, of course, but I like to save these type of questions for the show. So I'm really excited to talk about today because I actually have no idea what you do with your contacts, and I'm looking forward to learning.
Well, we're going to be diving into that topic today. So if your contact list is a bit of a mess and you wish you could spend more time managing your people around you, your contacts, I think this episode is going to be really valuable for you here today. As always, we like to kick things off with our top 3 favorite resources as of lately, and I'll share some of mine today. So the first one is related to today's topic, and that is a platform or software tool called Contactually. So it's kind of like a CRM for contacts and building relationships and building pipelines. Now, if you go to the website, you'll see it's kind of marketed towards real estate agents or real estate industry in general. Whereas what I've found is you can actually use that for personal use as well. I've used this for a while for my personal use until I switched over to another app, which I'll mention in just a moment, because it was just too powerful. There was just too many features. And if you're someone who is in the business of managing a lot of people and relationships, I think this is a great tool to have, regardless if you're in real estate or not. So go check out Contactually. It works on the web and has different apps as well. The next one is Busy Contacts. So this is a contact manager on the app, or on the Mac, I should say. And this is the app of choice that I use for managing my contacts, and it integrates with BusyCal, which is my favorite calendar app now as well. And so there's this nice integration between the two apps, and so I can see when I'm looking at someone's contact record when I last texted them, because it integrates with iMessage. It also allows me to see when I last had appointments with them, because it integrates with the calendar. So it's something I really love using because of the integration. So Busy Contacts. And then the third one is a wearable device called the Apollo Neuro. Now, to be fair, I've only had it for about 2 weeks now. And what this device does is you put it on your wrist or on your ankle, and it will vibrate, but you cannot hear anything. And even though it does emit auditory sounds and it kind of like vibrates, you cannot actually hear anything. And the whole purpose is to change your mood, to alleviate stress. And it has been scientifically proven to improve your HRV, which is your heart rate variability, which is an important health metric, because generally you want that number to be going up over time, which means that your general health status is good. And so I've been wearing this device, and I can say that in the last week that I've had it, my readiness score in my Oura ring was 87, which is the highest been on a weekly average. So I'm a big believer of this wearable, and hopefully I will have a more in-depth review on this in the future. But for now, I will mention it because I'm really loving this wearable. So it's the Apollo Neuro. So we'll make sure to link to everything that we just mentioned here in the show notes as well for you. So you can always go to theproductivityshow.com/341 or just swipe. You'll see it here as well.
All right. So like Tan said, we're going to be talking about contacts today, and we're all at different points in our contacts journey. For some people, your contacts maybe are just like a total mess. You have duplicates, you have out-of-date information, you can never find the person that you need. Maybe that's some of us. Other ones, your contacts are okay. It's not a problem necessarily, but really all you use it for is phoning or emailing someone, and you don't kind of take it to the next level. And then for some of us, our contacts are our life. Like that's how we make our money. That's how we put food on the table. So you want to be the most efficient and effective you can be when you're working with your contacts, wherever you store your contacts. And we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. Just want to give a shout out to our next week's episode. So next week, Tan and I were just talking about this before we press record. We're going to talk about, very similar to how recently we did an episode, if we only had $100 to invest in productivity tools, what would we buy? Our next episode is going to be same sort of thing, but it's going to be if we had $100 to invest in productivity apps. So we were just talking about how it's going to be hard to pick and choose what will fit in there. So that'll be an interesting discussion, and that will be next week. For contact management, really, one thing I wanted to clarify is we're talking about personal contact management here. So we're talking about like your work contacts, your personal contacts, the people in the organizations that you personally deal with. We're not necessarily talking about big CRM systems or marketing automation systems. We do touch on CRMs in TPS 329. So if you want to learn more about picking a CRM, you can check out that episode. But really, we're talking about managing to corral those contacts that you need to deal with on a daily basis or a weekly basis, whatever that is to you. Now, Tan, I have a question for you. Why do we need to manage our contacts anyway? Like, why can't we just dump everything into our phone or Outlook or whatever and just like let it go? Like, why do we need to be proactive about working with our contacts?
If I had to guess, most people probably get by and are just fine having people in their contact list, right? Just having their name and phone number, maybe even like a profile picture if you're a little bit more intermediate, and just get by just fine. We can call the people that we need to call or find people as we need. But I know sometimes we also are in situations where we look at a name and we go, who the heck is this person? And you go, oh my gosh, like I don't even remember. And then someone calls you or texts you and you see the name and you go, I have no idea who this person is. So if that is you, I think it's worthwhile to kind of like inspect your contact list and say, how can we clean this up? And how can we update it so that we are aware of all the people that we have in our lives? And I think the great analogy that we like to give here today, like your contacts are like a garden. The more you ignore them, the more out of control they become. You have like weeds popping up and like starts to look like something that you don't really want to control and manage anymore. And so we wanted to make sure that we spend some time grooming it and kind of like putting it in our control again. And so when you think about happiness, right, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, I think a big part of our happiness comes from the people that we surround ourselves with. So if we are around people that we care about and they know that we care about them and you know that they care about you, then I think we live much happier lives. And also when we're in business or even in a team setting at work, when we have good relationships with people, things just move faster, right? Trust is one of the biggest accelerators for anything that you want. And so it's worthwhile spending time figuring out ways to stay in touch with people, even if you are someone who is not in the line of work where people is like your main currency, if you may call it. And so I think that's why today's topic is so important, because I think everyone can benefit from this. Most of us are not talking enough about this or even thinking about managing our contacts. And if you're listening to this and you go, oh, I've never done anything like this, I think you're going to be learning a lot of cool things here today where you go, oh, maybe I should spend like, let's say 15 minutes a month or so working on this. And it could literally change your life.
Yeah, that garden example is so true. When my wife and I bought our first house, it had a garden in the back, and my wife and I, we had and still to this day have zero interest in gardening. It's just not our thing. But what we learned is just because if you don't actively do something with that garden, if you just decide, oh, I'm just going to leave it aside, I don't want to deal with it. It's not like it will stay the same and you can just ignore it. What will happen is it will just get completely out of control and start impacting other things. So you need to do something with a garden, and same with your contacts. If you just decide, hey, I'm just going to leave them go, that might be fine for now, but eventually you're going to have a problem. So you want to have some sort of proactive system for dealing with that. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So we have 5 contact management tips, and we're going to start with number 1, which is to have your contacts in one place, if that's possible. And we'll get to that in a second. And one of the reasons that contacts can become out of control is because they're stored all over the place. Like some are on your phone, some are in an Excel spreadsheet, some are on your computer, some are in this old email program you don't use anymore. Maybe you've got some in Yahoo Mail, some in Gmail, some in Hotmail or Outlook or whatever. They're just all over the place. Ideally, what you want to do is choose one place that will be the home for your contacts. So maybe that's Google, maybe that's iCloud, maybe that's Office 365, whatever it is. And that is even like leaving aside the software you use to interact with your contacts, but you want to have them stored in one central place. Now, if they are currently all over the place, that is something you can fix. Most platforms let you export your contacts and then import them into your chosen one. So what we're recommending is if that is your situation, take a little bit of time just to consolidate the contacts that you want to keep in one place, like rip off that Band-Aid and just have them all in one place, and then move forward, work from that one place. Now, sometimes you have no choice. I know a lot of you are probably yelling at your phone right now. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you have to keep your contacts separate. Sometimes maybe you're going to store your personal contacts in Google or iCloud or whatever, but you have to have your work contacts in another system like Office 365 lockdown or whatever. That's totally fine. That's, you can't really get away with that. But if you're going to be in that situation, just be careful where you're saving your contacts, so that new contacts, I should say, to make sure that they go to the right place. Now, Tan, what do you do with your contacts? Did you ever make it a project to consolidate them in one place? Where do you store yours?
I did this about 4 or 5 years ago because I used to have it in two places. It was either iCloud, because I got phone numbers from people and I would put them in my phone. And then I would have a lot of contacts in Google as well because of email, or just like in the past, even before I had an iPhone, I was a lot of times using Google services for a lot of different things. So I would have contacts in two different places. And then if you start to sync up Google with your phone, you have to then like have all these integrations set up, and you go, okay, if you save a contact, like what's the default setting in your contact app then? And by default, for many years, for some reason, it was Google. And over time, I ended up moving everything over to iCloud. And the reason for that mostly is, and this is going to sound funny, uh, I use the message app on my desktop quite a bit, whether it's on my laptop or on my main station. And sometimes what would happen is someone would text me and then I would see the phone number on the messages app on my desktop or laptop. But then if I look at my phone, I would see the actual name. And I thought, this is so weird. Why is it so out of sync? And long story short, I realized it's because the contact was stored in Google, whereas with all Apple products that I have, everything's synced up through iCloud. And so the only thing right now in my total life that is synced on Google is right now is mostly the calendar and mail stuff, and everything else as far as like contacts go into iCloud. And so that way, once I kind of fixed that and moved everything over to iCloud, anytime now someone texts me, I can actually see the name on the desktop. I don't see like a random phone number or something like that. So that was like the main reason for me to move this. And so now I know when someone's texting me, I know like, okay, this is who that person is. It's not like a random phone number, or if it is a random phone number, I don't have to scroll up and trying to figure out like who's actually texting me, or grab my phone to see who actually texted me. So it was like one small nuance, and obviously implemented the 3 times rule. Like we always talk about, like if something annoys you 3 times or more, you have to figure out the systemic solution and address that rather than figure out, some other solution to that. And I said, okay, what's the systemic issue here? And then I realized it's because the contacts were saved in 2 different places. And so going forward now, the default setting is always to save in iCloud.
Yeah, it's great advice, and it's a great example of when something is a problem, implementing the 3 times rule, and then just taking action. For me, I keep my contacts in Google generally, so it's synced between my phone's address book, Google, and my computer's address book. Works pretty well. Occasionally, I have the system like you do, but it doesn't come up that often. I actually had a notice that I had a few accidentally in iCloud. So I was breaking that rule of having them stored in one place. So this was a good example, a good opportunity to move everything, those strays, it was just like 10 or something like that, move those strays over to Google to keep them consolidated in one place. Now, one thing I do want to mention, we record these episodes live with the dojo, our online community, and TPS Plus members. And one thing I do want to mention is if you're going to be tempted to export your contacts, say, out of your work system into your personal system, make sure that you are allowed to do that. Some companies, even if it is technically possible to, say, export stuff out of Outlook, you may not be you may be violating some of your corporate rules doing that, even if technically it's possible. So just be very, very careful that you're not going to break any company rule for your convenience. We don't want to get anybody in trouble here. Speaking about TPS Plus, just want to give a shout out to our TPS Plus members. You can join at theproductivityshow.com/plus. TPS Plus is our premium version of the Productivity Show, where you get episodes a week early. You get them ad-free. You get to join in on the live streams. And if you're an annual member, you get the great t-shirt, the 1 Tweak a Week t-shirt that I'm wearing right now as we record. It's one of my favorite shirts. And it's a really great benefit. So if you're interested in a more upgraded version of the Productivity Show, go to theproductivityshow.com/plus. Tan, why don't you take tip number 2? So we did tip number 1, which was have your contacts in one place. What is our second tip?
Yeah, the second tip here today is to use the notes field, or any particular field that you can fill in your contact record. So pretty much any platform you use, again, Office 365, iCloud, Google, you can fill in notes usually for every single contact record. And I find that most people don't actually use this particular field. So it's really useful to update it with interesting facts about someone. So let's say you're like a really big networker, like you're a very social person, you like to stay in touch with people. Anytime you meet someone, at least what I do is if I find some interesting details about that person, and I just got their contacts info, then I'll update the notes field right away. It could be even stuff that we talked about. It could be stuff that they like, that they don't like, interesting facts about them. And I'll just update the notes field. And then next time when I see them, even if it's the second or third time, if I can like mentally look at my contact record, I can see, oh yeah, this is what this person is interested in. So again, I don't try to rely on my memory, because my memory is pretty terrible, especially when you're someone who tends to meet a lot of people. Trying to rely on your memory is a really bad idea. So just think about, like, what do they like? What's an interesting fact about them? What's the name of their sibling, or do they have multiple siblings? What are some projects that they're working on? What are they really grateful for? What is something that they're really passionate about? Put all that stuff in a note field. If you're someone who is single and you're kind of like dating someone, or you have like one person in your life that you're currently dating, I think it's really useful to update the notes fields as well with all these interesting data. So you can kind of like, buy gifts for them. Because even if you're not, dating at all, but you're trying to buy gifts for people in general, when you have the notes field in front of you, when you're trying to purchase a gift, you kind of get a better sense of what you want to purchase. Now, I'm going to guess, Brooks, since you've been married for, I don't know, 70 years or something, right? You probably have a good idea what your partner likes and, all these interesting details. Like in that case, you don't really need to use it. But if you're in a situation where you kind of fluidly meet a lot of different people and you don't always like see them on a day-to-day basis, I think this is really useful to have.
Dating, I don't remember what that is. I've been married almost 20 years, so yeah, the notes field not quite as important for me. Usually at this point in our marriage, we tell each other what we want to buy, so that's usually a good secret for marriage success. You never pick a bad gift in that case. But yeah, and just as someone maybe on the receiving end of what you were talking about, people really stand out when they remember these interesting facts for you. Or I was just thinking as you were talking, like we have this friend who just consistently wishes us happy anniversary. And like I said, we've been married almost 20 years, and basically consistently 20 years on, remembers our anniversary, makes some sort of like nice comment about it. And those type of people stick out. And it's not like he's a super genius. I mean, I'm sure he is, but obviously he has some way to be reminded of these kind of milestones. And then he takes proactive action to reach out. And that is something that's very easy to do using some of the tips that we talk about today. And it just, I heard a quote the other day, if you want to have a friend, be a friend. And that is a perfect example of how you can use these notes fields to really just take those relationships a little bit deeper, and you're not doing it in a creepy way, in a surface way. Like it's a way for you to really build these deeper relationships. So yeah, I love that tip about using the notes field to just remember those important things about people that, like you said, our brains are horrible at remembering.
Yeah, and if you want to take it to another level, you could fill in like the birthday as an example. Like that's another field that you can use to update it, right? And say, oh yeah, let me enter someone's birthday so that when it's coming up, you can send them a happy birthday message or something like that. And if it's out of sync right now, like one thing I did for a while was Facebook usually reminds you, and I'm on Facebook, usually reminds you when it is someone's birthday, or you can even see whose birthdays are coming up. So every now and then I would kind of like update fields for people that really matter to me, and just say, oh yeah, let me check if I had their birthday in my contacts. If not, I would update it, because the beautiful thing is in the future going forward, because it's synced with my calendar, I can then see in like a month view whose birthdays are coming up and then prepare for it. And if they're kind of like someone who is in my top 50, and which I'll talk about a little bit later, I will actually have like a reminder set up like 2 weeks in advance to say, hey, hey, this person's birthday is coming up in 2 weeks. What do you want to get that person? And so, anything that you can do to update the notes field, I would just recommend you do it. There's no such thing as like too much. Better too much than too little. So, for example, I am seriously dating someone right now, and I have this person's Colby score. I know what her dislikes are. I know her favorite restaurants, favorite destinations, favorite foods. I know all the things that she doesn't like. I even have her license plate number in my phone, so that for whatever moment, like let's say we're parking somewhere, right, and we need to pay for parking, I can pull it up on my phone and say, oh yeah, this is the parking or license plate number. We can fill it in just in case she doesn't know, or if I'm using her car or something like that, right? Like it's all these little things that just will save you time and energy and create all these efficiencies. So it's worthwhile spending time on updating the notes field here.
Don't worry, I know my wife's dislikes. No notes field required there. All right, so that's tip number 2, use the notes field. Tip number 3 is to deal with business cards. Like, how do you deal with business cards? I mean, business cards, I'm going to say, are less common maybe than they used to be, but it still happens. You go to a conference or an event and you come back with a pocket full of business cards. Now, what do you do with them? And who knows, maybe the pandemic, maybe the pandemic will finally kill this whole business card thing once and for all. I don't know. We don't know what the future is going to be, but at least before the pandemic, it was still a thing. So what do you do with all these business cards that you receive? Maybe you throw them in a drawer, never to look at again. But that to me is a real wasted opportunity, because, some of these people maybe you don't want to keep in contact with, but some of them might be a really useful contact, both on a personal and a business way. So what do you do with them? Well, you can manually type these things into your contacts. You can hire somebody to do that, I suppose, if you have an assistant or something like that. But there are tools that will help you scan and deal with business cards. And these are some of the tools that I've used in the past. Number 1 is Abby Business Card Reader. And we'll have a link to it in the show notes, theproductivityshow.com/341. So what this app will do, it's available for Android and iOS. Basically, you scan your business card with it, it reads it, and then if you want, it can save it to your contacts, or you can just keep it in the app. Also, if you're an Evernote user, Evernote actually has this is kind of like an under the radar feature, I feel like. Evernote actually has a surprisingly good business card reader, and has for years and years and years. For iOS and Android, I believe this feature is only for paid users. But what you do is if you scan the card and it identifies it as a business card, it will create a nicely formatted contact note for you for that card in Evernote. And then if you want to, you can save it to your device's contacts as well. So I've used that many, many times. Also, if you have a lot of business cards, this is kind of like maybe overkill if you just have a few. But if you have a lot of business cards on a regular basis, some document scanners will let you scan and export the business card information. So for example, the scanner that I use a lot, the Fujitsu ScanSnap, it's right behind me on my shelf there. You can take a stack of business cards, scan it in, and it will export the information, and you can put it to a V card. You can send it to Outlook, a bunch of different ways you can do. And it just beats having to manually sit there and type in all these business cards. Tan, you go to way more events than I do, or at least in the past, at least. What do you do? I assume you're somebody who at least traditionally has received a lot of business cards. What do you do with them?
Yeah, I used to have a box at home of business cards I would need to process at some point, and I would have one person come in once a month here in person to actually help me kind of like put stuff into contacts. And this is like way before I figure out like a technology solution. So I've done the manual process and realized like, okay, this is not really sustainable long term. And then the other solution I found over time that was helpful was using Evernote, kind of like the solution that you just mentioned, because you can use it as a way to scan it and then have contacts created and so on. And that is really helpful as well. And I even did it before they had that feature where you would kind of save it as a picture in Evernote and then kind of like manually update it and add it. And I've done that for a while before they added that feature. And I accidentally discovered that feature by accident when I was just using the app without actually knowing they had it. So when they released it, I was very happy with that because it definitely saved a lot of time. And nowadays, when not everyone can do this because of the phone technology and so on, but nowadays, what I prefer is actually sharing contacts within text messaging. So like if I get someone's phone number, I can then share my contact, kind of like my V card, and send it to the other person. So if you've never done this, it's the idea that you can, let's say on your iPhone, you can create your own contact profile, right? And then let's say you're texting someone. If you just swipe up and look at the options menu, you can say that you can share my contact with that person. And then it will send them your contact info. So it has like my profile picture, so they know who I am. It has my full name, the company name, my personal phone number, my work email, and then my personal email as well. So then I can share it. And then when they receive it in the text, they can just tap on it because it's a universal V card. And then most phones will just be able to read that and then save it as a contact info directly in their phone. So what the benefits of this are is then, because my name is oftentimes easily misspelled. So Tan is THANH, but oftentimes it's spelled as THAN or THANHHH or something, or even just TAN for simple purposes. And so this avoids a lot of misspellings that way. And same thing with my last name as well. So if you're someone who has kind of like a difficult name, I think this is a great solution because it's also efficient. There's no physical contact involved either. And it doesn't require any additional apps. So this is my go-to solution nowadays.
Yeah, I'm really curious what we're all going to do with exchanging contacts in a pandemic and post-pandemic world. So if you're listening to this and you want to share what you do, just hit us up on social media at Asian Efficiency on Twitter or at our Facebook page, Asian Efficiency. I'd love to hear what you all are doing for business cards because it's definitely a new world, and that whole concept of passing around a piece of paper just seems so wild now. It's funny how things can change so quickly. All right, so that's tip number 3, dealing with business cards. Tip number 4 is to use a third-party contacts app. So many of us are familiar with working with contacts in our platform of choice, whether it's in Google on their web interface or in the contacts app on the Mac or in Outlook or on iOS or Android or whatever. But there are third-party helper tools that will really let you master your contacts. And in the live stream, Giacomo, one of our listeners, has mentioned some of them, so I'm going to make sure to give those a shout out as well. So here's some examples of some types of apps that you can use to really take your contacts to the next level. So one is called CardHop. So there's a Mac app and an iOS app. Don't worry, we'll have some Windows apps soon. CardHop is for Mac and iOS. It's by the makers of Fantastical, which is a calendar app that I know Tan and I both use and we love. And they do a great job with contacts as well. So what they do is they use natural language to make it easy to capture or paste or extract contact information out of a block of text. So if you're maybe having something emailed to you or you're grabbing something off a website or something like that, you can just select it, paste it into CardHop, and it will automatically read it and translate it and make a really, really well-formed contact app for you. It saves having to like type this stuff in or copy and paste individual bits of text into individual fields. It does a really great job. So CardHop is a really great contacts management app on Mac and iOS. Another app is called Contacts Plus. That's on Android, iOS, Mac, web, all sorts of different platforms. And this is really a replacement for contacts. It will let you get your contacts together from a bunch of different sources. So if you have those if you have your contacts stored all over the place, like many of us do, it will go and grab them and bring them all together in one place, like we were talking about. And then it can read in social media information for those people, manage duplicates, suggest updates to information, lets you back up your contacts, transfer between services. It's really like an all-in-one contacts management app. So that's Contacts Plus. And then another category of apps is a personal CRM. So this is kind of like automatically doing some of the things that Tan was talking about manually with the notes field, where it will help you stay in contact with people and nurture relationships. It will let you know when you're losing touch with people. It will suggest and prompt opportunities to reach out to people. It'll give you nudges what to reach out about. Some popular apps for that are I guess it's pronounced Cove, so Covve, which is for Android and iOS. Or another popular one is called Yujo, so Yujo, which I have a little bit of experience with. That's an iOS only app, unfortunately. And these are apps that will really help you nurture those relationships that we talked about. How about you, Tan? I know you mentioned in the top 3 resources that you use Busy Contacts. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you use Busy Contacts for.
Yeah, so I discovered this app, Busy Contacts, through BusyCal. So BusyCal is the calendar app that I use, and the company behind it started to launch this app, and basically allowed you to sync your contacts with your calendar events. So for example, I could say, hey, I'm going to have lunch tomorrow at 2 p.m. with Brooks Duncan. And I would be able to tag Brooks Duncan with my contact record that I have of you. And so what that allows you to do then is to say, okay, one, in the calendar event itself, if I click on your name, it will pull up your contact record in the Busy Contacts app. And then I can see, oh, when was the last time that we texted each other? When was the last time we kind of interacted with each other? And there's all this summary information that's there within the app. And I can also see, like, when was the last time we had a shared event on the calendar? So maybe it was lunch, dinner, or something else. If you integrate it with the Apple Mail app, you can then also see, like, what are the last exchanges we had in Mail, which I don't have because I don't really use Mail that much for anymore. So I find that really useful to have. And that's kind of like my main way of not only like pruning contact records that I have, but also just managing stuff in there. Instead of using the default contacts app that comes with Mac and iOS. And so it kind of has like a little bit more advanced features just because it has tons of integrations. And so it also integrates with messages or iMessage. So you can kind of see like when you last texted and so on. And so the way I kind of use it as a personal CRM in a way is I use it in conjunction with OmniFocus. And so what I do is my personal system for just managing people and relationships, I have like a top 50 list of people. So I have a list literally called Top 50 in OmniFocus, and it's basically a list. And these are the top 50 people that I want to stay in touch with. Some of them are family, some of them are business relationships, some of them are friends that live in different cities, even in different countries. And I want to make sure that I want to stay in touch with them. These are the people that I have identified that I really want to be close with. And so anytime I check it off, because it has a defer date 6 weeks out, or set by standard 6 weeks, anytime I contacted them, I'll mark it off, and then I will not be able to see it until 6 weeks later because of the defer date. So that way I have at least one touch point with one person on there every 6 weeks or so. And so all these defer dates are very different, right? So there's not like 50 people have the same defer dates and then you can go through one by one over time. Because, there will be periods where I won't contact someone for 2-3 months or something, but at least because it's on my list, I know like, oh, this person is visible in OmniFocus. I should do something about this. So anytime I'm like at the airport or something, or going for a walk, and I'm like, hey, I should call someone or text someone, I will go through that list first to kind of see who I should reach out to. And so that's kind of like my own personal system that I've created. And I find it just really easy. It doesn't require any additional apps really, other than Busy Contacts, which I use already. And so I find it really simple to use. And that is what's working for me.
Wow, I feel sorry for person number 51. No reach out for you.
His name is Brooks Duncan.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's my reach out? I don't get any calls from Tan on a walk. All right. Maybe someday I'll crack the top 50. We'll see. maybe by the time we get to episode 400, I'll make it up there. We'll update later.
I'll let you know.
All right. So that's tip number 4, use a third-party contact app. Tip number 5, and this is like the unsexy part of contact management, but it's so powerful and useful. It's getting back to that garden metaphor we were talking about earlier, and that is to regularly clean your contacts data. And this is something in the live stream Kimberly mentioned. She says, I have to clean out my contacts. I have people added from back in 2011, and I have no idea who they are now. And cleaning out kind of has 2 different contacts. There's the cleaning out the like totally messed up, duplicate, broken contacts that we all have in our contacts list. And also there's the cleaning out the people maybe, they may sort of possibly made sense at one time. Maybe you scanned a bunch of business cards from a conference back in 2011, but really they're not somebody who you need to have in your contacts list. So that's kind of like 2 different parts of the concept of regularly cleaning out. Really, these messed up contacts or these bloated contacts can cause you to be able to not be able to find things, or even sometimes to lose data. You accidentally delete something, or there's just some sort of problem. And the solution is to periodically look through your contacts for duplicates and other things that you don't need. Some of those third-party tools we talked about earlier can really help with that. However, some of the platforms that we all, or many of us, store our contacts on actually have the ability to help with us as well. So if you store your contacts in Google, you can go log into the Gmail interface, go to contacts, and then go to merge and fix. And this will go through and help you remove duplicates and fix those messed up contacts that you might have. On macOS, in the Contacts app, you can select all contacts or a group of contacts and then go card, look for duplicates, and it will find the duplicates and then suggest dealing with them there. Or Outlook, unfortunately, doesn't, as far as I know, doesn't have a, please write in if you know, but I don't think Outlook has a built-in tool for this, but there are some workarounds. So in the show notes, we'll link to an article from Microsoft that gives you a way to like resolve or delete duplicate contacts in your database. And you can do that through some exporting and importing magic. One thing we'll say is if you're going to do this, we recommend that you back up your contacts first, of course. So use a third-party tool, or every instruction has a different, or every platform has a different way to export your contacts or back them up. But yeah, really recommend having some sort of maybe a repeating task in your calendar or your or your to-do list to just check and like clean out your contacts maybe a couple times a year, maybe when the time changes or something like that. If you live somewhere with a time change, if you don't, use some sort of other anchor, but have some sort of like regular time where you just go through quickly, clean out your contacts. The first time you do it is going to be maybe take a while, but after you do it that first time, it's something that won't take up much time at all. How about you, Tan? Do you do like regular contact maintenance or anything like that?
Yeah, I actually have a repeating task in my OmniFocus to do this once a year. So I have a repeating task in there that basically says update contact list and top 50 list. And so I'll do it once a year and then kind of use those tools as well to find any duplicates. Once you've done it once, you'll find that there's not that many duplicates that will appear over time. So that usually is just kind of like a check mark for me mentally to say, okay, I've done it. And there's usually nothing there. And so if you do a good job of just saving people in your phone going forward, there won't be any major issue. It's just like with most things, it's just the first time you do it, it's kind of a bit of a pain and takes a little bit of work to get done. But once you've done it, you kind of fix that quote unquote technical debt, then everything else going forward is relatively easy. So I do it once a year. It's a repeating task. Doesn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes or so, but it's just one of those quick maintenance things that I think is worthwhile doing. And one of the cool things we should be doing at some point, Brooks, is just like we should have an episode of all the things we do routinely. Like, what is something we do once a year, every quarter, or every 6 months? Because I think everyone could benefit from creating those checklists. So I'm just speaking out loud here as we're coming up with episode ideas. But I think a lot of people will find that hopefully helpful, just to see like, okay, well, every 5 years I have to update my TSA or my global entry. Let's put that in the calendar. Or if you know when your driver's license is expiring, like put that in there as well, right? Or update your air filter in your home or something like that. Like there's all these little things we do, but we kind of forget. But that's a whole different story. Maybe we'll do a different episode on that. But yeah, definitely do it once a year. Again, will take a little bit of time initially, but once you kind of like get a process going and you store contacts correctly, going forward, it shouldn't be a major issue.
Great idea. I captured that idea. I'll put it on the list. And if you're listening to this and you have ideas for episodes, definitely hit us up and let us know. We do these episodes for you. So we want to give you the content that you want to hear. One thing I'll say about cleaning out your data is the 3 times rule can really be your friend in this case. So if you're finding yourself going into your contacts to look for someone and you see a name that you don't recognize and you're like, who the heck is this? Maybe you don't do anything about it that first time, but if you start seeing the same names over and over again, that's a great opportunity to just like go in, look at it once, either keep it if you're reminded, oh yeah, this is what it is, or just use that opportunity to get rid of it. We see these duplicate or these old contacts all the time. 3 times rule and get rid of it if it's applicable. All right, Tan, what sort of action steps should people take when they are finished listening to this episode? What do we want them to do?
Yeah, as always at the Productivity Show and at Asian Efficiency, we want to make things as simple and actionable as possible. So if you made it this far, first of all, congratulations, you're a rock star. But second, I would recommend that you set aside some time to take a look at your contacts. So open up the Contacts app, whichever platform you use, and decide, okay, is this everything? Am I going to maybe merge stuff? Am I going to put everything in one place? Like that would be a great starting point to have. It's just like making sure that you have everything in one place, or if you do have them in separate places, that you're okay with that and you know that going forward. And if you already have done that, one of the things you could do next is see if you have any duplicates, because that's a very common issue as well, especially if you start merging stuff and moving stuff over. Oftentimes you will deal with duplicates. So start to fix that as well. And if you do those 2 things, I think you'll be way ahead and you'll be set up for a good, productive contact management system. And then refer back to this episode to implement some of those tips that we talked about here today. So again, you can find the links to everything that we talked about today in the show notes by going to theproductivityshow.com/341. And I'm really excited for next week's episode as well. Again, it's all about if we had $100 to invest in productivity apps, what would we buy? Well, if you're curious and you want to know, be sure to check out next week's episode.